Ready for another great day at sea. And it's almost like I feel like, the 11 o'clock hour is really when things get started. This way you had time for coffee, you had time to do your walk, and for some of you like to do that. But what is great about these longer cruises, being able to offer all these lectures and all these special added events, which on a shorter cruise is just not possible with everything that is there already. But these longer cruises take time to do different things, and one of these is being able to present you with great lectures. And this gentleman is great because we know each other now already. A couple of times he sailed with me, and I was on the Dream last year, and having him here again this year is just a great bonus for everybody because of his history and relationship and with Disney. He is a family member, and he's been here for over 50 years, and he knows stuff. He knows stuff that, he brings it all out, and it's just amazing, the history and the knowledge. So without further ado, please, once again, welcome Rob Morton. Thank you, Rob.
There's a few less people designed as empty, that are kind of dressed up as empty seats today, so this looks really nice. Thank you so much for being here. Before we get started, I was made aware of something very special happening today, and before I get to that, there's two things that if you were to ask Wendy, what does he not like to do? There's two things. I don't dance, and I don't sing. But I'm going to make an exception on the latter right now because it's Debbie's 70th birthday. And I would ask you to join me, but it's just too much effort to teach this song. So I'm just going to do it really fast, sing the song. And then if you would join me at the end and give her a big round of applause for that 70th birthday, that's such a big deal. Are you ready? Yeah. This is your birthday song. It isn't very long. Yeah, I think I heard somebody in there going, I think I know where Rob's going on this one. That's as much singing as you're gonna get. Sorry about that.
It was a drive-by birthday.
Drive-by. Okay, there you go. So thank you. Wendy and I both enjoyed meeting quite a few of you around the ship. We want that to continue, and we've already planned in. If we're going somewhere, we planned an extra few minutes, so we're not going to be late. So it's all good, and just great to hear so many different experiences, perspectives, and the great questions that you're asking. And generally, what you'll find if you ask a question of me, I'll do my best to answer it. I may tell you. Oh, that's a good question, or a great question, which means I may go and figure it out and come back. We'll talk later. If I ever tell you it's an excellent question, it means I don't know, or I can't tell you, or I have no idea what you're talking about. And any of those, it could happen. But thank you for that. On the screen, before we dive into the decade of the 80s, you'll see a picture that is me. I know yesterday I said, well, there's not many pictures. There's a few more here. A couple of them could be scary. And this one was the part of an original promotion for the very first Disney college program. And so I can't remember what the copy was around the photo or anything, but we did this. And when I was looking at the picture today, I remembered that something happened during the photo shoot, and this will give you a sense of what this time was like, and I'll give some other examples of that throughout our time together. This costume, I was a lead on Main Street, and first of all, if you're asked, hey, was that hat comfortable? No. Well, I would if I had the garters. So the costume came with garters, elastic garters, right? And they'd be the right color to match the vest and all of that. And the photographer or the director that was there on site decided, for some reason it was distracting. Obviously we want the picture to be on her, or the focus to be on her, and they said, please take your garters off. I did it, and I was afraid I was going to get fired because it's part of the costume. You don't take off the garters, all that kind of stuff. But no, I guess it's fine. I stayed a while. For those of you who are joining for the first time, I'll just put this up for a second. This is just a snapshot, and I'm very pleased to know I'm not going to go through all of this again, but we are going to pick up right around 1980, and we're going to continue on to that decade. And for me personally, a lot happened. For our company, a lot happened that I had the privilege to be connected with. So we're going to kind of dive into some of those connections and stories and memories. We're going to begin with my time in Adventureland, which took me from Pirates of the Caribbean to the Jungle Cruise, the world famous Jungle Cruise. You know, on that previous slide, you see the least surprising role, and I think as I've gone around and chatted, you're probably, yeah, I worked at the Jungle Cruise. We're going to talk a little bit about my experience opening EPCOT Center and the role that I played. In Search of Excellence is actually the title of a book, but it was written at a very pivotal time, and the impact it had on parts of our business and the impact it had on me personally was so significant that I look forward to sharing that with you. I'm going to share a little bit about my time in transportation. However, most of my stories are going to be while I was there, not so much what it was like to drive a bus. And then we'll talk about the opening of Disney MGM Studios, and then I promised you a parking lot love story. So we'll get there. All right. So when we left yesterday, I had just been hired for my spring break job at Pirates of the Caribbean, and I was meeting people there. I told a story about the ring, and I met managers that were celebrating 20 years, which is unbelievable. But I was meeting like Rick, who trained me at Pirates, and others that I worked with. They've been there for like 2 and 3 years. And I'm thinking that's crazy, because I'm still, I can work for a week. Well, the week turned into weekends, and so that was a great opportunity. I was still in high school. I still had a whole nother year of high school to go, so I could work weekends, I could work summer holidays. It was great. But in early 1980, they said, hey, do you want to go work on the Jungle Cruise? And that was a challenge to me. I wasn't really comfortable with the performance aspect, even though I'd been on stage in high school and so forth. But I did it. It was so much fun, and it was the opportunity to once again, live that lesson of, whatever you're asked to do, try to be the best there ever was. Now, am I telling you I'm the best Jungle Cruise skipper there ever was? Okay, I will tell you, I joked about, I'm still the best boat loader at Pirates of the Caribbean ever. I could outload anybody today. I did go back there a few years ago during the holiday period, where those of us who are no longer in the park, we would go back and we will help out for a shift or two, doing all kinds of, handing out guide maps, walking around with a pan and broom, which is fantastic. And then they assigned me to park strollers in front of Pirates of the Caribbean. I almost teared up. I'm going home. And despite my efforts, I guarantee you, I will never be the best there ever was at parking strollers. I had to do like a top 10 list of all of the things I learned about parking strollers, and none of them were positive. Anyway, so I moved over to the Jungle Cruise, met my trainer. One of the first things he did was give me this. This is a photo of my spiel, the date down here, 1979. I was thinking about, don't tell anybody I have this. I don't think I'm supposed to have it. So just go with me. But the Jungle Cruise was unique back at that point in time. That Jungle Cruise, along with the steam trains, Main Street, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, it was a boys' club. And for whatever reason, and they used theming as the reason, but I don't know what the real reason was. There were only male cast members at the Jungle Cruise at the time. I remember Donna, my friend Donna, was the first ever female lead there and on Main Street, and she was fantastic. And then she kind of broke the barrier, and then it continued to shatter as time went on. And So, but the goal of this book was to give us the guidance so that nothing was left to chance when we were now performing at the Jungle Cruise. And it included what happened on the boat, included what happened on the dock. It would give us backstory. You see, the Jungle Cruise narration philosophy. That sounds fancy. There were some little spiels that we could give about you keep the line moving and how many snakes we had, poisonous snakes we had living in the rafters, and they only attacked people that were standing still. If you kept moving, you were safe. And then the idea of reminders. The Jungle Cruise was unique as well because, again, this is ticket time, right? So you stood in line before you handed over your ticket. Everywhere else, you go, the turnstile was at the very front, you'd hand in your ticket, and if there was an issue or you needed to go get a different ticket, it was okay. But now they would have been in line for an hour or so before they get there. So it was really important to remind people that they needed to have their e-ticket. And they never listen. And down here I had something about we could make reference to, that's E as an extremely excited elephant. Now, we were overachievers. We wanted to be the best ever, so we needed to enhance that. So, extremely excited elephant is not sufficient. So when we get on that microphone, we'd say that's E. E as an 888 easily excitable elephants eagerly eating Easter eggs early Easter evenings, enjoying every edible egg. If you looked at LinkedIn, one of my skills is that. No, and some of my other favorites that we used to do just to keep people entertained is we used to love to announce, because we had great respect for veterans, and we'd say, today is very special. Today is Veterans Day at the Jungle Cruise. All veterans will be admitted free. That's veterans of the Civil War, accompanied by their parents and their horse. And then there was the, ladies and gentlemen, if there is anyone in line right now that has lost a roll of $20 bills wrapped in a red rubber band, we have great news. We found the red rubber band. Then remember when people would get off the boat, and one of my favorite, we always say, they'd say any number of things now, and it was, today is Mother-in-Law's Day. Come back later, you drop her by, we'll drop her in. That was in honor of your mom, Wendy. You'll see here, this is actually what that, one of the spiel pages looked like. And we really got very specific on what you were expected to say. And we actually had approved variations. Now, I can only imagine how many pages long the approved variations are today. I've heard all kinds of things, but very entertaining in most cases. But we knew this was really important. And one of the reasons that it was so important, in addition to we need to provide a great show and a consistent show, but we also knew that our supervisors would often hide in the jungle, waiting to catch us saying something we weren't supposed to say. Because it was very tempting that if you said something different that you knew you could get a laugh out of, you just couldn't resist. And they would do that. And I had to do this later on, when I became a supervisor of the Jungle Cruise, that I was expected to hide in the jungle to catch people doing things wrong. And that's another example of what the world was like then. It was very high expectations, very autocratic. It was top down. And I'm not saying any of those things to imply that that was a negative culture. It was what worked well at the time. And it was for the right reason. It was, we want to provide the best, most consistent experience for our guests we possibly can. And in order to do that, there cannot be a lot of variation in the way that we perform. So that was always a challenge. But over time, we evolved to where we still were out there, we were still observing, but we made just a little shift in our focus. And that shift was, let me go out and see how many Jungle Cruise skippers I can find who are amazing and recognize them instead of just calling out those who are not. So it's not about ignoring the bad, but it's shifting the focus, and the shift is simple. The execution of that is a little harder and it takes time, but that was that felt a lot better to me, and I'm so glad that we went in that direction. So when I'm training at the Jungle Cruise, I'm with my trainer Rich, and he said, being a Jungle Cruise skipper, it's not just memorizing a spiel, it's a mindset, it's a way of thinking. And one day we're over to the side, there used to be a little refreshment building there. I think the building's still there, but I'm not sure what's in it. And this is where there's a little bridge that takes you backstage, and we're standing there, and he's talking about the difference between the water on one side. This is the Swanboat Canal, and it's clear water. It looks very nice, and just on the other side of a little gate is the Jungle Cruise. We dye the water. Well, why do we dye the water? Because we don't want you to see the secrets behind how the boats get guided around the river. So, every morning, the maintenance team would be like dumping dye into and they would always dump it at the waterfall, at Schweitzer Falls, because it would mix everything up, and it would float through, and you'd see this red mass coming through, and then the green, and then in a couple of hours it was all spread out. And then between the two bodies of water was this little gate, and our guests would get off the boat, everybody could see this, and he was telling me the story about how they were trying all of these different things to cover this up because it just wasn't good show. And they worked with horticulture to put plants on it, and the plants all died. They had some other covers that, he goes, I don't know what the reason is, but that they fall down, and we haven't found anything successful here. And he goes, no matter what we've tried to do, it just goes to show you, you just cannot cover up a water gate. I had to work way too hard at that one. For those of you who are going, I have no idea what he's talking about. There's plenty of people in here that do. But it was a way of thinking, right? And one of my other favorite memories at the Jungle Cruise was one day, a friend of mine from high school showed up with her family, and she got on my boat. And I'm standing down, I'm looking, you're in the boat, I'm up front, she's right here. I'm thinking this is gonna be a good time, because back then, we got a lot closer to this. It literally was a squeeze play. We called it the squeeze play. And if I timed it just right, I could move up and this elephant would squirt and it would hit the bow of the boat. So it hit right behind me, and just like those four people, they're soaked. I've done this, I got it, I'm the master at this. And it did, it worked out perfectly. Actually, it worked a little too good because it was so funny. I forgot about the second elephant. And I hosed down the entire other side of it. And I gotta tell you, I was scared to death because I thought I'm gonna lose my job. Because back then people had like cameras that aren't supposed to get wet. And when I got in, I got a standing ovation. I think the only one I ever got on the Jungle. And I got that, but it was, that was the one. I think there must be a reason that we don't do the squeeze play anymore, and it might have been me. So I spent some time at the Jungle Cruise, and again, I've graduated from high school. I'm going to college full time. I'm still working part time, and then I went one day and I met with one of my managers, like a senior manager named Mary Ann one time, and I talked about how, well, could I be a trainer? And she goes, funny you should ask. I was gonna find you today and tell you you're gonna be a trainer, so I gotta be a trainer. And then a little bit later, I went to see Mary Ann, and I said, Mary Ann, is there a lead opportunity for me? I've now trained a bunch of people at the Pirates of the Caribbean, and they haven't caused any damage that I know of, and I could do that. She goes, funny you should ask. We were going to come and tell you, and back then they had, part-time leads. And this woman was just so incredibly supportive, giving this kid an opportunity to move forward and to succeed. And my first lead job, again, that's like a working foreman, or in today's terminology, a coordinator, was at the Tropical Serenade in the Treehouse. Ooh. And the Tropical Serenade is the Enchanted Tiki Room, but that's the name, this is what it was called at the time. And so it also included like all of Adventureland, all the common areas of Adventureland. If there was a piece of trash, I was in charge of it, of picking it up. And it also meant that I was in amazing shape because I was up and down the treehouse several times a day to make sure everything was there, and I had 117 steps. So that was a great opportunity. And I remember being there on New Year's Eve in, I think it would have been 1980, probably in 1980, New Year's Eve, going into 81, and we had like 93,000 people in the park that day. It had been the busiest day the Magic Kingdom had ever had. I don't know if we made that or not, because we certainly don't announce attendance figures anymore about how crazy it was. And at that moment in time, I was really happy that I was at the Tropical Serenade and not any number of other places that I could have been. I then moved as a lead over to Main Street. This was a pressure cooker opportunity for any lead, because you were responsible for everything that happened. Not just, there's vehicles going up and down Main Street, but there's vehicles pulled by horses going up and down Main Street. There are parades. There are every show at Cinderella Castle. We were responsible for all the audience control for that. Any filming, special event, all of that, that was us. I was there for some of the original candlelight processionals at the Magic Kingdom, and getting all the seating done and all the coordination related to that. My office was right under the train station. This is a recent photo. This place still exists. It is affectionately known as the bomb shelter. And so this is where our office was, and everybody would come and go. Again, right underneath the train station. I don't think we had pretty photographs at that moment in time, but that was still here. I was a lead on Main Street during the event of the Tencennial celebration. And again, for those of you that weren't here yesterday, some of my photos, either they're old, or if I've taken them, they're a little bit, it's not you, it's me. So here's another picture of me at that time. I am the one on the right. As opposed to the middle. My friend Glenn, when we had our picture taken, you can see me, I have the special Tencennial button on as well, celebrating that at the time. One of my favorite stories about Glenn, he was an engineer on a steam train once, and he came down to the bomb shelter without eyebrows. There's a real firebox, and it's a real steam train, so he had a little adventure. I talked to him about that not too long ago. One of the events that I was able to help with was a filming of a television special for the 10th anniversary. If you're someone who loves really awful television, go look this up. Now, you're going to recognize some names on there. John Schneider from the Dukes of Hazzard, and then Dana Plato, Michael Keaton. So they were there. They were filming all over the place. Now, here's one of the challenges of this TV special. Michael Keaton played the role of a cast member. Michael Keaton played a role of a cast member that was really bad at his job. And every time we saw Michael Keaton, he had a different role as a cast member because he had messed up the one that he'd had previously. And we're all going, this would never happen. He would be, oh my gosh. So I had a chance to have some fun interactions with him, like after hours and such when I was there. But it was a lot of fun. And then John Schneider, in addition to being part of this TV special, on the weekend of our 10th anniversary, he had a band. I didn't know this, but he performed 3 concerts on Saturday, 3 concerts on Sunday at Cinderella Castle. He had some unbelievably committed fans. One of these fans showed up to all 6 performances with a bouquet of 12 red roses. And all 6 performances, we had to get a wheelchair or call an ambulance because they fainted. That's another thing that the Main Street League does, right? The other beauty of being in Main Street is that you get seen. And I'm a big believer of being in the right place at the right time, doing the right job, and doing it well. You get noticed. And I didn't really know that I was noticed. This is mid-1982 where I had the idea that I could go to school part-time and work full-time. Okay, I'll finish part of that story later, but so now I'm full-time, and there was something else that was coming up later in 1982, which was the opening of EPCOT Center. I, along with many of my fellow leads, we had a dream. We wanted nothing more than to be asked to go over and be opening leads at an attraction at EPCOT Center somewhere. My leader that I had mentioned previously, Mary Ann, had moved over. She was responsible for all the attractions in World Showcase. I'm thinking, Mary Ann likes me. I'm gonna go. And the phone never rang. Some of my friends and colleagues, they left and they went. And to be honest, I was getting discouraged because that was my dream. That's what I wanted to do so badly. In August of that year, I got a phone call. It's from my new manager named Mary. Okay, now I worked for a lot of, I don't know why, but a lot of women named Mary or Mary Ann. And I would have done anything for any of them. They were just amazing women, amazing leaders, and I adored them. And so my new manager, Mary, called me and said, we know that you'd like to go to EPCOT Center, but instead, you've been promoted and you're now an area assistant supervisor in Main Street and eventually in the same area I worked in. And I was shocked. I'm 20 years old. And for a long period of time, I don't know if it still holds or not, it doesn't really matter, but I was the youngest operations supervisor they'd ever had. Right place, right time, doing the right job. I had the opportunity. Apparently there was some list of here's people that are going to get promoted because you're doubling the size. You're going from 1 theme park to 2 theme parks. You've got to have a lot of people that can lead that. So now I went from, I'm now the supervisor of Pirates and Jungle Cruise Skippers. And I'm going to share with you, this is one of the scary photos.
I can see your son today.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. He said you can see my son in that picture, and that's unfortunately that's. So now, Mary called me. I'm almost shaking because this was like my 5-year plan, and it was coming true, and I didn't have any idea what I was doing. And I hung up the phone. 10 minutes later, the phone rang, and then it was Mary Ann. And she talked to me, and she told me how much I deserved it. I'd earned the opportunity. And then I said something to the effect of, Mary Ann, I won't let you down. And then she said to me, there's no way you ever could. And she passed away about 10 years ago, and I've shared that with others that have been very close to her. And that one moment, that one statement meant more to me than you can possibly imagine to give me that confidence to be able to move forward. The next day I showed up. Now all of a sudden I've got to wear a tie. Now this was another issue, right? Because all of us, so many people were getting promoted and we didn't have the right clothes. But we did have a discount. And Sir Edward's haberdashery over at the Disney shopping village. And we all had a variety of different color pastel pants, pastel shirts, and ties that were pastel, all the same color, and all polyester. But this was the challenge of buying business attire. But my first day, I went back, and then again, my new manager was Mary, and she took me to breakfast that morning, and she said something else to me that was so impactful. And she said, your job, now that you're in this role, again, it was the equivalent of a guest experience manager today, and she said, your job's to make decisions. And she said, lead with safety. If you always lead with safety, it's gonna be real hard to make a mistake, but your job is to make decisions, and it will pretty much always be better for you to make a decision and be wrong than to not make a decision at all. And again, I needed to hear those things. I needed to hear that there was some confidence in their support, and that this is what was expected. It was fairly simple, but I also knew that both of them had my back, which also, as a new supervisor, meant so much. One of the cool things about this role, I now had an office. My office was right behind this. This is the second story of the ice cream parlor on Main Street, USA. We could walk out here and watch the parade. Okay, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something, but you could also sneak in, you can peek out through the windows, because there's a, between the facade that you see and the office building behind it, there's like a 3-foot catwalk. So you could walk out there, we could look through, you'd never see us, and that was a lot of fun. But let's get back. Now, remember, my dream had been to open EPCOT Center. That was still happening. I'm a little bummed that I'm still in the area that I'd been in before. I did get to learn how to engineer a steam train. That was cool. And I kept my eyebrows. But I was a little bummed that I wasn't gonna get to be part of that. Until I got another phone call. And the phone call was on September 30th, 1982. It was, I think, in the evening. And they say, hey, Rob, we need help tomorrow morning with the grand opening ceremony. Can you help? Yes. We need you to be there at 3:30 in the morning. Okay. We need you to dress like a guest. My job on opening day, right next to this stage, was to fill space under a palm tree. Because and what they told me is that there was uncertainty as to how many people were gonna show up, and they needed it to look good on television. Now, honestly, I don't know what the real stuff, but that's what I was told, and for some reason, I was there dressed like a guest under a palm tree. But I was there. Okay. Oh, it was so, and so anyway, we did that. I remember this. I mean, the governor was there speaking, the CEO was there. Fireworks went off, the monorail comes in, and it was just chills, chills, chills. I could not believe. I was then asked, I did spend quite a bit of time going around and helping. I was doing spiel coaching, so anybody that had a microphone, I would go and listen to them and give them feedback and help them up their game a little bit. So I got to be involved in it, but that's a unique role. It was like filling space at the Oscars. You know, someone gets up to use the restroom, they have somebody else sit in their seat, so there's no empty seats. That was me. All right. 3 weeks later, we actually had the official dedication. And that was significant because this picture of the fountain that's blurry, but around that we had representatives from all of the World Showcase countries and other countries that had brought water from their countries. And we mixed, this was known as the Fountain of Nations, we mixed the water all together as a part of the ceremony. And again, I was there, 3:30 in the morning, setting up chairs for all of the dignitaries and VIPs and all of that kind of stuff. And then my other memory is, right after that was to go to, I guess for some reason the manager that was overseeing our work that day was a food and beverage manager that we knew from the Magic Kingdom, and he said to myself and 2 others, he said, "Come with me." And we went over to the Rose and Crown pub, and we had some challenges with food and beverage capacity back then. The line for the Rose and Crown pub went past Canada. But we're in 3-piece suits and name tags, and he took us in the back door of the Rose and Crown through the kitchen. We walked in, he says, "Take off your name tag." Yeah, I had my first experience with British ale that day. That's all I remember about it. And then for those, most of you know, EPCOT is an acronym. Officially, it stands for Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow, but it also stands for every person comes out tired. It's now one of the options you get at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy. Every parent carries one toddler. Every paycheck comes on Thursday. Still does unless you're retired. And excruciating polyester All right, and so then I mentioned to say, so one of the other things while I was still in Main Street in Adventureland, we had another filming. A book had been written called In Search of Excellence by Tom Peters and Bob Waterman, and they featured a variety of companies that excelled in some significant way, and they chose Disney with a particular focus on how we train people to deliver a consistent, exceptional level of service and performance. And so they were filming a PBS special. If you just go onto YouTube, look In Search of Excellence Disney, you can see like a 13-minute clip of it. It is hysterical. You could almost turn the sound off and just watch it. You go, but the way people are dressed is funny, and they mentioned ticket prices were $18 back then. So I got to be a part of the filming. It was at the same time as the Donald Duck 50th birthday celebration, where we actually had 50 ducks with party hats and name tags in the parade. Next week, we're going to take a walk in the park together. I'm going to do a little photo tour of the Magic Kingdom, and I'm going to come back to this day and tell you the story about what happened, because I was here, and it didn't work out the way that you see it on the camera. But part of the story is we went in and we followed a cast member going through Disney traditions, the orientation. They went through training on the Jungle Cruise. This is Greg sitting in Disney traditions. Yep, it was all set up, right? But it was so much fun to take people through and start to show them that. Why is this significant? Because when this special came out, when the book, people started reading the book, they saw the TV special, they started calling Disney and saying, "Can we come to your training? We need help." It began, this is how it started. Now back then it was called Disney Seminar Productions. It's been called a number of things, but the concept of sharing best practices and lessons learned with other organizations was, it started with a book called In Search of Excellence and a TV special. And it's built into the business. In a couple of sessions, I'll do a little deeper dive into concepts that are shared and communicated by Disney Institute. But this was its inception. And if this hadn't happened, if they hadn't written that book, who knows what I would have spent my last 20 years at Disney doing. So to me, this was a very significant moment. One other thing happened before I left Main Street. This is one of the antique cars. I had the honor of driving, and I think it was this one, but there's three. There's a blue, a red, and a yellow one. I'm pretty sure it was this one. Former President Nixon and his family around the Magic Kingdom in this vehicle. And as far as I know, I'm the only person who has ever driven during park hours an antique vehicle from Main Street into Adventureland to Pirates of the Caribbean. But hey, as a former president, you do stuff like that, right? I got this wonderful note from our vice president that also included a book that Richard Nixon had written called Leaders, autographed, and again, one of my prized possession. Was I involved in it? I made sure he safely got from Main Street to Pirates of the Caribbean and helped them in and out of boats and stuff like that. That's all I did. Earlier this year, we went to the Nixon Presidential Library Museum in California, and I'm talking to one of the docents there, and I'm telling them this story, and I'm kind of hoping maybe there'll be a photo, because there's a photo of me, the family's getting their picture taken with the castle behind them, and I'm guarding a gate back behind the picture. And it was in some magazine, but I can't find it anywhere. I'm hoping maybe they have it at the museum. I don't know that he was really buying that I'd ever met him, because he said, now, when he stood up, how tall was he? I said, really? Who would make this up? A lot of fun. And then before I left, I celebrated, well, I didn't think it was possible, I celebrated my 5-year anniversary. Back then, you had a nice breakfast, you get the pin. We always called this the ruby pin. It's not a ruby. I don't know what it is, but kind of looks like a ruby. So we got that, we go to the breakfast, and then our vice president gets up and they want to say something nice about everybody. And so, I don't know, they worked really hard at what they're going to say about Rob. Well, you know, Rob's this has been very unique for us to have Rob as a new supervisor, because he's actually the only supervisor who needs his parents' permission to work past midnight. And then went on to say, you know what, we did think that, you know, it would be helpful for him and it would give him great confidence if he could lead people that are younger than he is, but we haven't found any yet. So then all of a sudden it's that time, during this period, you move from one place to another because they told you were going from one place to another. So I moved to Wed Transportation Systems, and I got to drive buses. Now here's the thing about buses back then. We thought we were a big bad bus company. We had 53 total buses, 38 of these and 15 of these, and we thought we were so cool. And we were like the 5th largest bus fleet in Florida. Okay. There's hundreds and hundreds of buses now. I kind of lose track of what the number is, but back then we thought we were really, really cool. Disney did have the 5th largest Navy at one point in the world. Walt Disney World did, but along the same time, things were a little sketchy because we had entered a period, it was really a difficult time from when Walt Disney passed away. A lot of things happened. We opened the Magic Kingdom, we opened EPCOT Center, but we kind of refer to this as the transition years, and there's a great book about that time, and it's called Storming the Magic Kingdom, where we literally came within a few minutes of losing our entire company to a corporate raider. And that was a challenge. We had investors in Texas, the Bass family, our oil family, that came in and said, you know what, we will make this threat go away. And they paid a lot of money for that to happen. Under one condition, you need new leadership. And that was when Michael Eisner and Frank Wells came and joined our company. And I had the good fortune of, well, let's see, we kind of, sometimes internally, right, we refer to this time, the nice way to say it is the transition years from Walt to Michael. You know, if I were to ask you to name a hit animated feature between 1967 and 1985, there's not one. You know, so things kind of dried up, and it was a challenge. We also referred to it as management by seance. What would Walt do? Significant. I was there on the first day that Michael and Frank Wells came to Walt Disney World. I was there when he addressed cast members in front of Cinderella Castle, and the first thing he said, actually before his official remarks, almost doing a mic check, he sees all these cast members, he goes, "We're not for sale." He could say anything once after that, because we were nervous. And I was responsible during that visit to have a bus available to take them and the entourage that accompanies senior executives from the Contemporary Resort to the Transportation Ticket Center so they could get on a monorail. Now, those of you who've been to Walt Disney World, you're thinking, there's a monorail that goes from the Contemporary. I the only thing I can figure out is that they wanted to showcase the different types of transportation that we have, right? And so we had, this bus was, we cleaned that thing, I mean, you could have had breakfast off the floor, it was fantastic. And our protocol was, if we had, whenever we were doing special moves with our buses, they would leave TTC 30 minutes before the pickup time and go in stage and wait. So I think we were supposed to meet at 8:30, and so at 8 o'clock, the bus would leave and go and stage at the Contemporary. The night before, I get a call from one of our directors that became a Disney legend, says, we need, it's now 8 o'clock, we need the bus there at 8 o'clock. So protocol says, the bus leaves at 7:30, gets there at 8. So I get there that morning, the bus is there, our vice president, also future Disney legend, has a conniption in my face about how wasteful it is to have a bus sitting there for so long because the time had never changed. And what do you think I said? Yes, sir, that will never happen again. Did I blame the director? Nope. Did I get mad about it? No. Did it make a good story? Yeah, pretty much. I've talked about that a lot. We all talk about that time. And again, not because it was for the right reasons. But years later, I had a chance to have both of them together. And I said, I remember that time you yelled at me for having a bus there too early, and you're the one that told me it was your fault. And we laughed. After a couple of years of buses, I went to the Highway in the Sky. And this is actually a map. Lou, where are you? Lou here today? I met Lou yesterday.
Hello.
What's that? I was gonna have him come up here and act out, but this was the like one of the maps. You see all these little pylon numbers, and it really was like flying. In fact, the pilot of the Disney corporate plane at the time was also a monorail pilot. Closest thing to flying without leaving the ground. Really a fun opportunity. I loved piloting the monorail, and back then, fortunately, we had the opportunity to have guests in the front cab. You met so many wonderful people, and you know, you look really cool driving a monorail. I'm sorry, that was a sweet day. We just at Disneyland got the ride up front there, and we were telling them, you know, where from. I used to work in the monorail many years ago. I don't think they were impressed, but one of my favorite memories of having somebody in the front cab one night is. I had somebody from Allentown, Pennsylvania with an uptown girl. And I just was making sure I didn't run into something, right? But it was so much fun. And you know, I missed it. I do hope someday that opportunity returns again, because it is something that is quite magical. And there was another thing that happened when I was in buses and I was in monorails. Our offices were out at the Transportation Ticket Center, so you'd walk back and forth by the ticket booths all day long. And something happened that day that shifted one day that shifted my thinking. And okay, this is a current ticket booth, but this is about a ticket booth, so this is what you get. I remember one day walking across, I think from where the cafeteria was to the office, and I'm looking over, and there was a woman significantly older than I am and two young girls about my age. And something caught my eye, and I kind of looked back, and what I'm seeing is she's pulling dollar bills out of a sock to pay for the tickets. I said, okay, I've seen a lot. I've not seen that. That's very interesting. So I said, okay, and I walked on. A few minutes later, I'm in my office, and I hear something in the office next to mine, and I hear crying. And it's like, okay, this doesn't sound good, and I kind of look around, and there's a group gathered. I said, okay, well, something big's going on, and the person crying was the cast member that was in that ticket booth. And she was telling the story about how this was a grandmother with her two granddaughters who had been saving for this trip $1 at a time in order to make that happen. And it kind of hit me, and it's like, how could we ever let them down? What that means. And over the years, as I've continued, and I've had the opportunity to work with other organizations, and so often the focus is on, well, we got to take care of these people that are coming in, they're spending this much money on a new car. And they were so worried about how they were treating somebody who came in and they're spending, let's say, $75,000 on a new car, or $100,000 a new car, and completely ignoring the experience of somebody who's coming in and spending $15,000 or $20,000, or buying one that's pre-owned for less money than that. Without the consideration is the money that people are spending on the less expensive car means significantly more to that human being than what's being spent for the more expensive car. Same thing happens. You walk into an airplane and you turn left or you turn right. Can the amenities be different? Sure. Should you be treated differently as a human being? No way. And I think that lesson, and the other lesson is, at some point, the person who's spending less now is going to have a choice of where they spend more money when they have it in the future. And I will always think back to that. It's a significant, it's not about how much money you have, it's not how much you're spending, it's what it means to the individual. And I thought that was such an important lesson for me. Okay. Disney MGM Studios opened. I was asked, I had actually I'd moved over to a new role. I followed a former leader of mine, and I was now in charge of the World Showcase Fellowship Program, or one of the coordinators for that program at EPCOT Center with Cultural Exchange Program Experience. But I was, very quickly, I was asked to come back and help with the opening of Disney MGM Studios. And my job was to wrangle buses and to get people, invited people from the press to and from all of these events. One of the things that happened over in the 80s and 90s, every time we had a grand opening, you could be guaranteed of one thing. It was going to be a torrential downpour during the grand opening. I'm in a tuxedo at the Caribbean Beach Resort because we were opening that at the same time with water up to above my knees. And but as a part of the opening as well, they needed to get a lot of things done, and they did a lot of photo shoots. So I was invited to come and be part of a photo shoot for the Brown Derby restaurant. Yeah, so my boss is, that was her up there above there. I don't know who this was. I was excited because they promised that. What's the signature dish? Cobb salad. They promised this Cobb salad. The Cobb salad sat in front of us for 3 hours. And we didn't get any Cobb salad. And then here's what it looked like in the guidebook. So that was my starring role in the original guide map of the Disney MGM Studios. But recently, I guess in the last few weeks, we went back and had lunch right next to this booth where this happened, and I had this presentation on my phone. I could pull it up and I'm showing the server. It didn't get it. All right. This is the one you've been waiting for. This is the one I teased earlier. I want to tell you about the day that I met Wendy. This is what we looked like back then. On her very first day at Walt Disney World, I picked her up in a parking lot while driving an unmarked white van. And if you come back tomorrow, you're going to get the rest of the story. Here's what we have looking forward to tomorrow. I'm going to talk about travel became such a significant part of my life, and it began in the 1990s. We're going to talk about the opening of Euro Disney, and I'm going to share some thoughts about that and some stories from that experience. I have a real princess story to share with you. We'll talk about my time in guest relations and then joining the Disney Institute. So a lot happened in the 90s. The 90s was known as the Disney decade. So again, I look forward to sharing all of that with you. Thank you so much for being here. Have a great rest of the day. We'll see you tomorrow.